Hey, it's Mike Byrnes with another episode of Business Bests. Super excited to be presenting on under the umbrella of business planning. And today is part 2 of offsite meetings. And so in the previous recording, I did kind of the benefits and drawbacks of an offsite, and then I also did the preparation part. In this part, I would really love to cover the actual day and what that looks like. There usually is some kind of welcome message, whether that is delivered by the facilitator, if you hire a facilitator, or whether it's by the leadership of that organization. It really depends on what the message is going to be. If it's kind of logistics of the day, the facilitator can do that, and they probably have done it a ton, so they're probably pretty good at that. If it is something more of like a message from the company, that should probably come from that CEO type of person, whether that person sits around all the time or is just there for the very beginning. That could be up to you how you shape this. But that person can then kind of go into what the business purposes are, but they also can kind of go into some of those other beneficial things that I had said in an earlier recording. So if it's kind of a rewards piece of it, this is where you really want to have that message come across, and a similar message should kind of be happening at the end too, so that all these people feel like there's some kind of gratitude, that they feel appreciated for all the time and effort that they put through this. Especially if it's really business focused, that's where you really want to thank them over and over again for all their contributions. One of the best practices to motivate people to talk and share ideas and come up with things is, if it is that type of thing where you're trying to come up with some new solution, maybe give an in-person reward for the best idea. And maybe there isn't anyone that's going to be singled out at the end. They don't know that, but everyone's going to get a reward. I coach baseball, and at the end of the season, it's always difficult. People struggle. Some people are exceptional, and some people are not very good. I make sure everybody gets an award, and I still, to this day, those kids, if I go to their house, they'll like want to show me where their award is hung up in their room. I know older people don't think like that. A little piece of paper is not going to make that big of a difference, but some kind of recognition in front of this type group, if the group is more of a senior type of, well-respected, well-rounded, influential group within your organization, to get that feedback in front of everybody, in front of those key people, I think that carries a lot of weight too. So maybe let them know that there's a prize if you want to have them speak. The other thing is an icebreaker. I know that there's all kinds of cheesy icebreakers. People hear them like, oh man, what's your favorite color? Or what's your favorite ice cream? I will tell you, I'm a baseball coach, and when I meet all the players for the first time, I tell them who I am, and I say, hey, I want everybody to know everybody else. And so I said, can you say your name, maybe your favorite position, and what type of ice cream you like, or what's your favorite food? And believe it or not, like as they go through their favorite food, like, oh, you like pepperoni pizza? Oh, so does he. Oh, you like cheeseburgers? And so does, and like you start to kind of have a little bit of an icebreaker, right? And so even though that's really cheesy in the baseball world, where the boys have a small attention span, that's maybe as small as I want to go. But there are facilitators usually have some really good icebreakers. I think of the cheesiest ones is the trust fall, and some kind of like other silly things like that. Probably want to avoid those, because this is that almost like your first or second impression of what the offsite's going to be like. And so you want to be a little careful of the idea that you bring to the table, but it does serve a function. I talked in a previous video about how me messing up with my food, and the focus group went really well after that because I broke the ice for everybody. So maybe you can think of what that would look like, and how you can get everybody to feel comfortable in the room to be able to share whatever they're going to have to really share throughout the day or the week, or however long the offsite's going to be. Sometimes these icebreakers can be an individual person comes up with something, or maybe have it be little unique teams. Like a really great idea would be, hey, everybody, here's the same ingredients for a cookie. Nobody's going to get the recipe. You guys, teams of 3, are going to kind of come up with your best cookie and the best presentation, and the facility will cook them while we're talking, and then everybody's going to experiment and vote and see which one's the best. And that can be a hoot, right? Like, and it can be part of the, the facilitation. People can kind of go back to that, and there's some lessons learned and that type of stuff. Think of something creative that everybody will just kind of have a little bit of an ability to get to know somebody, interact with somebody that maybe they don't know. But don't take too much time with this. It is an important step, and that's why you almost see it at every offsite. But just don't do it the wrong way because it can have a bad impression. Earlier on, you might want to get into some ground rules or maybe guidelines is probably a better way to describe it. An example might be that and this is more of a strategy session, and you're going to try to keep things at the strategy level and not get down into the tactics too much. And that could be something that you want to communicate up front, because then when you get into that type of conversation, the facilitator can reroute them, right? Or people will just kind of, self-control themselves so they don't get into those types of conversations. Another pretty common one is no cell phones. I think you can make an exception to the rule from time to time if people are responsible enough, but people are very addicted to cell phones and tablets and laptops and whatever it might be. You will find they will contribute it better unless they need some resource that they got to get the information for. But if they close down all that stuff, they're going to function better. Now, again, create an exception if somebody has their wife is in labor and they're going to have a baby any minute, or they have kids that are home with a new babysitter and they might call and be sad or something like that. Make sure that there's some rules that are there in place, but don't be too strict with them, because if they're well-respected people in the organization, they can kind of make the right decision. But you just kind of get across that they'll be better focused if that stuff's not out. One common one I like to say is that everybody has an equal voice. So back in the office, there's probably a pecking order, that totem pole, the CEO's at the top, and then the chief operating officer, and so on. If you can think about that sometimes the best ideas come from people down more on the front lines, then you want them to be speaking more, right? You want it to be flipped on its head. And that's where you have to be careful. If you have that senior person that's facilitating, that could be a no-no. But then even if they're in the room and they're contributing, people can just be very hesitant to go against them, or very hesitant to speak as much as them, right? So be very careful, and there's a lot of different best practices you can have as a facilitator. Like one of them is to have people write down their ideas, and then the facilitator randomly picks people. The randomly part for the facilitator is actually well thought out. Like they're kind of going to the more junior people to get them to talk before the senior people would talk. So be careful that you have some kind of rules of the road around just everybody having the expectation that everyone has an equal voice in the offsite. A logistics thing is, let people know when the breaks are going to be. Some people have weaker bladders than others, and other people just need to disconnect. Sometimes they do need to go and put out a fire out in the office that's going on back at home. Other times they want to just check in with their family members, or other times they just need to clear the air. Believe it or not, the temperature in the room sometimes is always an issue. I don't mean to be sexist, but a lot of times the women are cold and the men are warm. And so sometimes someone needs to go out of the room to warm up, or it's usually the case that it's a little cold in a room, but if the sun's shining in, it could be the other way around, that it's too warm. And so someone maybe needs to leave just for that reason. So make sure that they all know what the break schedule looks like, and when it's appropriate to go to the bathroom, when it isn't. One big one that's a little bit different than the strategy and tactics is I like to call it the no quicksand topics. And a quicksand topic, if you're in quicksand, you just start sinking and you can't get out of it. You might have an agenda of 10 things you want to cover, but one quicksand topic could suck you in and you don't cover the other 9. So you might have some rules to the road of like, hey, we're only going to cover these things for a certain amount of time. So you don't have the ability to dominate on topic A, because we need to get to B, C, D, E, and F. In the other video, I had said it's nice for the facilitator to know if there's an elephant in the room. So there are people that come into these offsites that just don't like each other. There's maybe good cause for that, maybe there isn't. But you need to have a rule of the road that everyone's going to be respected, and that you can debate ideas, but you can't attack people. And that, I think, is fair. And a good facilitator's got to be on point if that type of stuff is coming up. because it can get ugly, and it can, again, ruin the whole culture of the organization from those people that are coming, and that can spread when people get back. So if he or she, the facilitator, can bring them together to have a good dialogue, and then maybe some creative solution between the two of them comes out of that, man, your organization is going to be that much better off. So as a consultant, I can tell you we love whiteboards. Even if I'm a bad speller or bad handwriting, it's just nice to jot ideas down and capture it. One thing I like to maybe have as a rule is that anybody can go up and write an idea down on a piece of paper while someone else is talking. That way that the idea isn't forgotten, because you know that if somebody says something and then 10 people raise their hand, someone might have had a great idea that just wasn't covered. Now, they maybe just write 3 words, and then it's up to the facilitator to loop back to those ideas so something isn't missed just because one person was talking and another person didn't get time on the microphone, kind of thing. A good facilitator is going to want to record the event, and when I do this, I always say it's not to associate comment with Jim Smith or with Sally, whoever. Like I'm never trying to do that. What I'm just trying to do is capture the good ideas. And maybe even some of the things that need to be improved, right? You might have somebody that's there within the organization or outside the organization, so it might be that with the facilitator's team that is just a note taker. And part of that note taking is observational, so you can start to see how does so-and-so interact, or how do they carry themselves, or how do they function as a team. If you're going to do those types of icebreakers that have a point and they're going to try to teach them a lesson about it after, the facilitator can only watch 1 or 2 groups, right? They can bounce throughout the room, but you want someone to kind of overshadow them. And sometimes people get stuck too, and so they need that extra body. If the facilitator is already talking with another subgroup, that extra body can be a junior facilitator and get them moving ahead. So you might have that extra body depending on what you're trying to cover, and that note-taking can be crucial in the follow-up and the to-dos after the fact. I'm assuming that this offsite rolls up under business planning, and that's why I'm covering it in this kind of fashion. This is where the business plan actually will be a part of the presentation, right? You might say, hey, here's what our plan is, this is what it looks like. And then some of those key components can actually factor in really well into a business plan. So I had said one of the stages that you want to do in a good business plan is have a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those actually can be a part of the agenda. So you can say, hey, from 10 to 11:30, we're going to talk about strengths. We're going to take a break. Then during lunch, we're going to talk about weaknesses. That's usually a little bit longer topic, so that's 2 hours. On day 2, we're going to get into the opportunities and the threats, and then try to tie it all together on day 3. That could be a strategy that you use the SWOT analysis. If you have that information already, that helps, but allow people to refreshen it and bring new ideas and new input to the table because maybe that wasn't already captured in the version that you have beforehand. Say you've already done all that work, then you really want to get into the major initiatives. So again, what's the purpose of this strategy meeting? Initiative A might be growth. Initiative B might be long-term planning. C might be operational efficiency, and maybe technology and utilization of AI, or whatever it might be. Maybe that's how you structure your planning session. So day 1 is going to be on topic A, and then day 2 is B, and day 3 is this. If you have a shorter time frame, maybe it's all going to be in the same day, then you just do like 2-hour chunks with breaks in between, and then you even break up the 2 hours. And that really depends on the resources they have, time and dollars, right? Like the more that people are outside the office, the less is getting done, but it can be really important strategy work that might not take place back in the office. So it's kind of a give or take of how long you stretch this out and what you cover as topics. Just like in the business planning and in the template that I have a parking lot section. And what that means is, hey, you got a really great idea. We're just not going to cover it here. And so that's not forgotten, you almost have the whiteboard and it has a list. It started with just the heading of parking lot. But as things come up that you're just not going to be able to cover in this session, you put them in the parking lot. Maybe you get to them at the end if you build in like an hour of just miscellaneous time, and then you can kind of bang out those items. or maybe they're just going to have to happen at a future offsite or in some other fashion back when people get into the office. So I had said icebreakers. A little part of that can be team building, but there probably should be some purpose of the offsite to make the part of the day, whether it's the first day or throughout, to be team building. And I always think of that, the movie Remembering the Titans, when the coach wakes everybody up at 3 a.m. and the other coach is like, hey, we're not in the military, right? And they're running through the woods, and all of a sudden, when the sun comes up, they come up at a gravesite, and the lead character, Denzel Washington's character, says, like something along the lines of, like, just like these men didn't come together, if we don't come together as a team, we're going to be destroyed too, or something like that. And it had some purpose to the team building. I don't think you need to wake up your session attendees, offsite attendees at 3 a.m. and make it go run, but come up with something that has some kind of purpose, right? If they're going to go do a cooking class, like I had mentioned with the cookie ingredients, or maybe they do something more fun, or maybe it's just like a small little exercise to break up the day. One that I like to do is have 3 to 5 people break up as teams and have to pick the best movie, and they're going to present to everyone else in the room on the best movie. So if you only have 10 people, maybe it's teams of 2 or 3, and they're going to present on the best movie. They'll have 5 minutes to do a presentation, and everybody can vote on the winner, but they can't vote on their own, right? So that kind of keeps it fair. And so when that information comes out, it's kind of cool, and people can kind of like play parts of the movie, or they can kind of come up with kind of cool ways to sell it or whatever. The interesting thing is, how does the whole process work? And you can kind of see how your employees work together. And this is where you might want to put 2 people that don't naturally get along so well in the same group, because they could come with very strong ideas on what the best movie is. They can come with different approaches to why and how you want to present it and sell this idea to the others. And they might actually have different roles. Like one person might want to have more of kind of a marketing and scripting role. The other person might be more on the presenting side. The other one might just be kind of a leadership to make sure everything's coordinated well. And so if you have an observer of how that all works, then you can tie it in back to the business to say, it didn't really matter what movie you picked. I thought it was a hoot. We had a fun time. We laughed. And you came up with some kind of cool presentations. You got to know each other a little bit better. But here's why we went through this, and actually have the facilitator tie back some of the business lessons that you might have learned from that, and then actually have people interact on a grander scheme, and hopefully something good could come out of that. That's kind of one idea of in-the-room team building. Another one is you kind of go out and have some fun, some adventures, and you do something. You can do something as crazy as have teams that do a scavenger hunt, and they got to go through a city that they don't really know and kind of go see some kind of sites and come back with some information. All kinds of crazy, cool, fun things. Maybe they need to take, like, this team needs to go out and take some pictures of certain things and kind of report back. It's amazing when people kind of are aligned together and they want to compete against others. They just kind of grow a friendship. So it can be a valuable exercise to do. I can give you 1,000 ideas on team building. It's really up to what you want to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and then the types of people too. Like some people are really good at exercise and other people aren't. So you might actually have an opportunity for some people to go for a scenic walk. Like one time on one of these things, there was a bike ride over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I participated in that. It's pretty cool. You might see other ones where it's like a build a bike exercise, or stuffed backpacks for charity, or whatever it might be, that will help people start to accomplish some little small goal, and maybe have it related to a cause, and have some kind of warm, fuzzy feeling coming out of it. If they do present to others, you kind of get a sense of who are the people that can be presenters, that can carry a message, that can make people laugh, that can warm the room, because it's a non-business related topic. And then that actually makes sense later on when you get back into the office. So in some ways, you're kind of evaluating the people who are there. So part of that's team building. Part of the agenda, you might want to just have activities, right? And so especially the more of a reward or / boondoggle thing it is. I've gone and facilitated things that are at a really high-end kind of golf course resort thing, and some people want to go play golf, some people want to go to the spa, some people want to hang out at the pool, some people want to go in town and shop. And I could come up with a whole bunch of other things. And so you can if you kind of know the group and can kind of come up with some themes, if you do give them options, you just got to make sure you get enough people to represent enough to go do that one thing. The other part is social, right? So dinners and meals and all that kind of stuff. Some you might want to say, hey, this is free time for you. If you're going to be away for 3 days, you need time to go do what you need to go do and keep your life moving back at home. Or maybe some people just want to go to the hotel gym or the resort. They want to go for a walk or a swim or dive in the ocean, wherever you are. And they want to go do that kind of fun stuff and enjoy that trip, all right? So they don't want everything controlled. So don't make them feel like they're a prisoner. But you do want to also kind of create opportunities for them to, if they don't have anything to do, that you can kind of say, hey, this is your free block. But in parallel, if you want to do this, this is what some of us are going to be doing. In the earlier video, I had said, who do you want to invite? And I said internal versus external. One of the things is, the consultant or expert or speaker, this can be a valuable piece to this. So you bring in somebody that educates them. In the industry, it's not going to carry as much wow factor as something outside the industry. So like the motivational speaker can cut across all industries, right? You have somebody come in and they do such a good job, and hopefully you've seen recordings and you see how they work, so you kind of know what you're going to expect. You hire them, you bring them in. Maybe that's the one thing when they get back home and they talk about their trip that they talk about. Like, hey, there was a speaker that did this and it was so cool and blah, blah, blah. So whether it's a magic show or a band or something, some of those social types of things are okay, but I like the speaker like in the room as part of the actual offsite, and that should be an expense that's factored in, depending on how much money you have. You can be more creative if you don't have a lot of money, but maybe if it's a decent amount, you can bring in a really well-known type of person that's going to have that wow effect. So you're starting to wrap up the offsite. You really want to have time at the end for recapping. You might want to have a little bit of a recap after every chunk of time. So let's say if you're doing things in 2-hour segments, the last 15 minutes is for the facilitator to kind of make sure everything was captured and everybody takes the notes and you put it up on a board where everybody can see it. And then you can kind of close that chapter and go on to a different topic. But at the end, same thing. You want to kind of wrap all this stuff up. What are all those key things you talked about? What progress did you make? What things are still open-ended? What are the to-dos? Let's do an opt-in, like who wants to volunteer to do X, Y, and Z topic, and let them opt in, take some ownership. You might get people to raise hands, you might not. It's always better if people raise their hands because then they're going to be more willing to want to jump into it. If you do get some people assigned to different things, have them work with the facilitator on deadlines. And actually, so now you've kind of created a mini plan before you've even left the premises. So that's a key part, the wrap up and making sure you have time to pull that all together. Now, the facilitator should be involved in all the kind of social activities after hours and what all that, because I think that's good. People in the room can build up a relationship with that person and they're more likely to speak freely, et cetera. But the facilitator needs time, too, to go back after each day and make sure that the notes that that person's taking are really detailed and they start to get into the early recommendation stage because that's going to play an important role after all this exercise is completed. Photos, if you have the budget, are an important thing to consider. So hiring a photographer that has a quality lens and knows what they're doing with lighting and all that stuff can capture the focus group, with permission of the people in the room, that maybe there's something that's going to come out of this after that you want to have some messaging, and a photo will actually make it come to life for people that weren't in the room. But you also can do some kind of cool things with photos. If this is a really senior group, one of the things that you're going to see is that a lot of times headshots are really important to the way that you market your organization externally, and you're going to want to always have updated photos. If you have all these people in the room, and especially if they're coming from different parts of the country, what a great time to capture the photos with a consistent photographer so everything kind of looks in sync. And actually, someone might have had a picture that's 5 years old and then 10 years old, and before you know, it doesn't look like them anymore. With me, I keep losing my hair every year, so my pictures get dated pretty fast, right? So same thing, my cheeks go in and out. I lose weight, I gain weight. So you might want to think about having a photographer there. And that is going to tie into one of the things I like to have at the end is some kind of reward or thank you. You might actually just have a group photo of everybody, depending on the size, and actually have a frame with the theme. So hopefully the marketing person that helped coordinate all this came up with a theme for the offsite. And then maybe you have that engraved in the frame. Everyone gets a thank you gift plus a picture of all the people that attended. It's not something you have to do, but if you had the photographer, just one thing you can maybe bang out pretty quickly. There are all other kinds of cool things. Be careful with gifts that they need to travel well, especially if people are coming in from remote locations. I've seen some really great gifts that can't go back. You know, a nice bottle of champagne. Well, you can't get that through security, right? On the flight. Jellies and jams and all that kind of stuff's in jars. That stuff can't really go back well. Anything that just not going to go through TSA well, eliminate that as an idea. Anything that's maybe too fragile. Sometimes you can just show them what it might look like and then actually just have it shipped back to their office so that you don't have to, so that's kind of a reward that they don't have to deal with bringing back that gift. But the recognition part is just as important as the actual gift. Maybe that they have like a catalog that they can choose from of something that they want so they can get exactly what they want. If that's kind of a logo item, it's okay. Like, yay, does a senior executive need another logo piece? Yes or no, I don't know. But that swag, kind of mixed reviews. It can be important. Maybe that's one of the things you give, but you give them something else too. Think about customizing that. So now maybe there was a part of the earlier sessions where you got to know people. Like, a question came up, like, what's the most important thing to you? And you found out what that was, and then you tie in the gift, and then you kind of let everybody know, like, we heard what you said, and that type of stuff, even if it's like a $10 gift, but it ties in really well to what they said earlier, that's going to make a difference in that person's life, and they'll actually have that wow moment, that warm, fuzzy feeling. So you've done the appreciation part, then you need to do the feedback part. I'm kind of debate in my own head whether the feedback part should happen before the appreciation part. The appreciation part is going to obviously make them feel a little happier, so the feedback score should go up a little. So if you're an executive or a facilitator and you want this to go well, you would want to do it after the appreciation gifts. But a simple thing on site, I like to have it on site so that they can have all those fresh thoughts. You go back 3 days later, maybe you come back in on a Monday and your office is blowing up and you got 1,000 things to do and you really can't put the time in and you forgot some stuff, right? So capturing the feedback, and there's some standard feedback forms I could present to you, but evaluating the presenter on a scale 1 to 10, how could he or she improve? What did you like that they did? Those types of questions. Ask some questions about the facility and the location. Social activities, what did they like? What was their favorite part? What did they get out of this? Leave some open-ended stuff. And then because the group is so small, you might want to require them to put their names. But if this is a group that was really enthusiastic and shared a lot, they're probably not going to mind sharing their names. So that feedback part is really important. So send them off on a high note, gather that feedback, and now it goes to the follow-up. So part of the follow-up can be a cadence, right, too. So you can't overthank people enough if you really appreciate them. So maybe you thanked them in person as they left, but then you sent them a follow-up back to their office, especially if they're in satellite offices. So remember I said maybe you have a photographer. Well, guess what? If you had a famous speaker and everyone got to take a picture with that famous person, maybe it's a sports figure or an author of a book or something, that kind of is pretty cool, right? So they show up back to their office and there's a thank you note, and it was overnighted, and then there's a picture, and they kind of feel like, wow, like they got back and they felt like they made a difference. And they're going to feel like they were valued, and they're going to be a better employee because of that. The other thing that you want to start to think about is the facilitator recap. So again, I'm hoping that you hire a facilitator. A professional should recap the notes, and then have recommendations. It can be more complicated than that, but those are the two key takeaways. And some of that can be personal related, but it's usually higher end, more on the business. And the facilitator obviously is going to want to get hired again, so they really need to deliver on this. This is a key component to that. There might be a little give and take where actually it's not just a report that's sent, but the facilitator, one, goes through it, or two, has a dialogue with people that led the focus group or with people that weren't there. They just want to hear firsthand what was discussed. And sometimes the facilitator can add a little bit more color than what's actually typed in words in the document. As the meeting wrapped up, I had said you maybe have to-dos and people will opt in to take ownership, and then maybe deadlines can be associated. Well, that's part of a plan, right? So whether you call that rolling up under the business plan or that's its own off-site plan, who then owns that, who takes it and makes it a living and breathing document so that you're staying on top of that stuff and moving forward. That kind of key execution part is critical. I had said maybe sometimes an offsite could be a waste of time. Well, if that step falls apart, that is going to be a key component to whether the event was a success or not. So make sure in advance of the session ending that is taken care of, that the recap has all that information. The facilitator doesn't always have to have 100% of that duty. That can be shared because you almost want someone back in the office that's going to be there all the time, because the facilitator will eventually fizzle out unless it's a consultant that's always working with that organization. And so now you start to get in the situation where you have this long list of to-dos, people, and you're actually starting to make progress. If you make progress, you have a really valuable idea that is actually going to get moved forward, it's in queue, or a real quick fix and something happened and some great things happen, or just the business is a success for some reason, make sure that you report back on that. So that definitely report back to the group that attended. Maybe it's a larger company-wide thing. And also, it might be just a really valuable time to go back to the company and say, hey, we invested a whole bunch of time to do this offsite planning, and here's some of the stuff that came out of that. So you're now expanding that knowledge to a larger group. And you can even incorporate later feedback from people that weren't there. If anybody else has something else to offer, please respond, or please set up a one-on-one call, or whatever it might be. And so that offsite can actually become onsite, but it's people taking time to step outside of the business and plan the business, if that makes any sense. I did say also that things are very strategic in nature, usually in an offsite. Back when you get into the office is where you get into the nitty-gritty, like you get into the weeds and the details, the crossing the T's and dotting the I's kind of thing. So that's where you're actually going to, the business plan is going to have the roots, and they're going to sink into the ground, and things are going to start to make sense and start to take shape. So the business plan probably gets some of this stuff incorporated. That should be a living and breathing document. And oh, by the way, the business plan probably has a cycle that you do, and so should this offsite piece. I'm a big believer of this input, and having people come together can be really valuable. And if you find that's valuable, right out of the gates, plan the next one, right? And if it's something you've already done twice, maybe you plan out the next 2 or 3, and you have it really well thought out, and you become better and better and better at executing this. I hope this information has been helpful. This is another episode of Business Best from Mike Byrnes. I really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. Hey, this is Mike Byrnes, and I just want to do a quick introduction. I am a consultant. I've been doing this for a long, long time, decades. I've been published a lot in the industry that I work in, and I had all this great knowledge in my head, and I wanted to share it. In a world of AI where you can kind of get information from whoever, when you used to do a Google search, information came up and kind of the author got more credit, right? Because you would take them to the website and you would watch their video on that page and you would know who was sharing the information. So I kind of came up with the idea of now, with all that stuff kind of going public and AI taking it and giving the answers, the experts really aren't getting the recognition. So I wanted to create some videos of me so you can see authentically that it's me, although AI will probably replace people and you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Although, who's going to want to replace this ugly mug or replicate this ugly mug? But yeah, so I am excited to be bringing you content. My goal is to make whoever is watching this more successful, and I try to come up with a topic over and over and over again that will make businesses and individuals a little bit better at what they do. I would love your feedback. My name is Mike Byrnes, so you could Google me, but I own a company called Byrnes Consulting. You can send me a message. Always like feedback, always looking for ways to improve, so send that. But if you also like something that you see, don't be afraid to share that too. It'll reinforce that, that I'm doing the right thing. So thank you for tuning into these videos, and I appreciate it. I'll keep trying to share all kinds of business bests to make you more successful. Thank you.